All right, folks, we're going to start in about 2 or 3 minutes. So start working your way to your seats, and we're going to get going here. Hello. There's a bit of a line at registration, so we're just gonna slow roll it here a little bit and get started in a couple minutes. And then we have a reception after this, so we have a little bit of a buffer at the end here. And I'll also talk twice as fast when we start, so we'll make up the time. Just kidding. All right, get started in about 2 minutes. All right, I think we're going to get started here. Welcome, everyone. My name is Isaac Vandenberg, and I'm the CEO at Launch Alaska, and it is so great to see everyone here tonight. I was telling a story yesterday with the companies that when my wife and I were pregnant with our first baby, we had all of this, work to get to the point where we were ready, and we were, getting the baby room ready and practice breathing and figuring out how this is all going to work. And then we got to the delivery day, and it was like, everyone's playing their roles, and everyone's doing their best, and all of a sudden there's this baby there, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's a baby at the end of this process. I can't believe this happens. And I know this is very different than that, but it does feel like that a little bit. It's like we do all this work, all this coordinating, Zoom sessions, and just calendaring galore, and then all of a sudden we get to have all of you here, your bright shining faces, and get everyone together, and it's surprising and delighting to see you all. So thanks for being with us. I wanted to start here with land acknowledgement because tonight we're gathering in Anchorage, Alaska on the Dena'ina territory, and we just wanted to thank the Dena'ina people for their past, present, and future care for the land, which has made kind of all of our prosperity and our way of life possible. And we're also tonight really thinking about folks in Western Alaska. I think all of us know someone that has gone through a really hard time over the last couple of weeks. And so we are all thinking about how we can help and reminded of the kind of interconnectedness between all of us. We're doing all these, fancy projects, working with technology, but it really comes back to people and the connections between all of us. So folks out there are in our thoughts. There's also some great organizations, which I'm sure folks in this audience are already aware of, but the Alaska Community Foundation has a Western Alaska Disaster Recovery Fund, and the Alaska Native Heritage Center is also hosting a donation drive through the end of this week. And so thank you to those organizations. Thanks to all of you for anything you can do. And it is a reminder that we are super connected, and that these storms and gradually increasing natural disasters, we see it as a call for us to move faster and be more bold and be more aggressive in deploying solutions for climate change. We draw that link at Launch Alaska. And we see this as both a moral imperative and also a massive economic opportunity for Alaska. I think when we started this program several years ago, we kind of started with the question of how can Alaska play an important role as the world thinks about its own energy transition? What role can we play? And what we kind of arrived at is that Alaska can be this place where we develop some of our own solutions, but we also partner with incredible innovators from outside of Alaska who partner with Alaska organizations to develop solutions and deploy their tech. And that if we play that role as Alaskans, that there's a really exciting kind of, two birds with one stone approach, where we're both solving some of our own challenges, our own technological and economic challenges, but we're also being relevant to this really massive global economic opportunity, because we can, invest in some of those companies. We can export some of our expertise. We can, find relationships with some of the most exciting projects that are happening in the industries of tomorrow. And so that really is what this is all about at the end of the day, is working with this kind of global community of innovators and partnering with them. This is a marathon. This is not a short-term thing, although it's kind of both a marathon and a sprint, where we need to be thinking simultaneously about the long term for Alaska's kind of energy future, but also just moving really quickly and taking fast tactical moves as well. So the projects that you're going to see today, we're going to run through a few of them. It's really exciting for me to be able to do this, because I feel like we're all so busy at Launch. We're in the middle of all these projects. We're executing at a really high level. But today is a day where we get to kind of pause and welcome in everyone in the public to kind of peek under the hood and see what are these, how do these projects actually work and why are we doing them? And you can kind of get an insider's view on these projects. So it's really gratifying for me to be able to just kind of like open this up to everyone and let you see what we're up to and what some of the companies that we're working with are up to as well. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a shout out and thanks to Senator Lisa Murkowski. She has been a massive supporter for Launch Alaska really ever since we got started, and she sent us a little video. So if we can test our technical systems here, I think Lisa Murkowski is going to give us a little message here.
So hello to all of you attending this year's TrAKtion event, and thanks, Isaac, for your continued leadership at Launch Alaska. And really thank you to your whole entire team for all that you do. I appreciate the opportunity to share a few words about working together to advance clean energy innovation in Alaska. Now, you're already demonstrating how that's done on practically a daily basis. We just witnessed the Arctic Road Rally, which successfully demonstrated electric vehicles' ability to operate in the Arctic. And then, of course, congratulations to all who were part of the groundbreaking ceremony for the 8.5 megawatt solar project out in Houston, which will be the largest in our state. Here and around the country, we are leaning into newer and cleaner forms of energy. And while we absolutely have to protect our economy and our energy security, which we do through existing resource production, we shouldn't be afraid of our energy future. We need to develop the next generation of technologies that will power our future while also reducing the emissions that impact climate change. Over the last 21 months, we've had just a flurry of activity in Congress, which I think does just that. Substantial funding and assistance is on the table to help move clean energy projects forward in our state. It started with my Energy Act of 2020, which updated federal energy laws for really the first time since about 2007. It authorized about $35 billion for everything from renewable resources to carbon capture and advanced nuclear. And then it continued last year with our bipartisan infrastructure law, which funded many of the authorizations in my Energy Act as part of a $70 billion investment in clean energy. And this past month, my colleagues across the aisle passed their Inflation Reduction Act. And I couldn't support the overall bill, but it did contain a number of energy-related provisions that I have been championing. Add it all up, and there is now more federal support available for renewables and emerging technologies than really at any other time in our history. And that's going to make a real difference in our state. With all of these measures that have become law, my goal now is to bring as much of it home to Alaska as possible. Over the next few years, we will have unprecedented opportunities to build out new projects. And I've got no doubt that Launch Alaska will be at the forefront, enabling our startups to pioneer and harness the potential of a wide range of clean energy technologies. Alaskans, we know, will benefit from those efforts and know that I'm going to be very proud to support you. So thanks again for inviting me to speak. Hope you have a great event. Thank you and take care.
All right, and thank you to the Senator for sending in those comments. She talked a lot about projects, and that might be something that's surprising for those of you who knew Launch Alaska 3 or 4 years ago when we were very much a kind of a startup accelerator that was working with these very early stage entrepreneurs to kind of get the firms up and running. What we realized really 3 years ago was that in order for Alaska to play that role that Senator Murkowski is talking about, to kind of be this thriving energy, transportation, industry, innovation community, is that we needed to get some of these projects out of the starting block. We need to get them unstuck. And we think that that is the kind of special missing ingredient that wasn't there previously. We had a bunch of startups that would come to Alaska or that would be homegrown startups that would say, yes, like I want to do stuff. I want to bid on a project, or I want to work with an infrastructure owner. I want to do something, but there weren't projects to bid on. There were a lot of kind of energy audits sitting on the shelf and feasibility studies, but not things getting moving. And so that's why Launch Alaska over the last couple of years has said, let's start getting some of these big projects unstuck. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, some of those approaches today. So TrAKtion is that. It's this overview of how we're working with startups and with infrastructure owners to source innovation, to develop solutions together, and to get stuff done and try to move quickly. And we're gonna use this session to talk about a few key programs or a few key projects in Alaska. This is really just skimming the surface of everything that's going on here, but we thought these three were pretty representative of three examples. The first one you may have heard about is this Arctic Road Rally. Has anyone heard about the Arctic Road Rally? Yeah, good. This event was supposed to be in year one, this kind of beta event where we would run a few cars between Fairbanks to Kaparik, and keep it really low key, test out a few systems, not really tell anyone about it. But it was interesting to just kind of see over the course of the months and weeks leading up to that, some of the big vehicle OEMs got word of it, and our kind of friends at Conoco and Alyeska Tire and some of the folks that kind of own the infrastructure necessary to make this event happen started getting really excited, and we kind of got pulled in reluctantly to making this a much bigger event than we anticipated it being, which I think is a sign of kind of how ready we all are to see these kinds of projects getting done in the state. So that project, just the kind of highlights on the Arctic Road Rally, ended up being 10 electric vehicles, made the drive from Fairbanks to Licktock Point, which is right literally at the edge of the Arctic Ocean, and it was a 1,096-mile round trip route, and truly first of its kind of journey in Alaska. There were Rivians, there was a Hummer. You're gonna have to correct me here, Rob, if I get any of this wrong. EVs, Teslas, Ford F-150. So really neat kind of to demonstrate these electric vehicles. But the thing that I think is really exciting about that, even more so, is that it's helping us learn about how do we build electric transportation infrastructure in places where we don't have any yet, or where there might not be a transmission line or distribution lines, and where we still need to be ready for these electric vehicles that are showing up. I'm also excited about the future of that event, and so you all should follow that for 2023, and follow where that's headed, because I think this year it was, again, supposed to be a beta year. It was in warm weather. We did it, kind of with diesel-backed charging solutions. But next year, we're already looking at how do we transition some of those charging solutions to being, maybe there's a hydrogen fuel cell, maybe there's some renewable to charging solutions, and so it's already becoming this source of potential innovation for the state. So I think we have a small video on the Arctic Road Rally to show here.
Hey there, I'm Tim Leach. I'm the transportation lead with Launch Alaska, and I've been helping manage the Arctic Road Rally that we are just starting here in Fairbanks, Alaska. We are so excited to have 10 electric vehicles going for the first time ever to the northernmost drivable point in the U.S.
We temporarily electrified the entire Dalton Highway. It's an 800-mile gravel road. None of it's for electric vehicles, and none of it's really for driving. So we're going to be able to go out there now for the first time ever, drive to the northernmost drivable point in North America in these vehicles that have just now become available, testing it in one of the most rugged, remote places in all the world, that's Alaska. What we're actually doing now, though, is introducing modern technology that can make everybody's lives a bit better, whether it's Native Alaskans and remote communities, and whether it's our oil and gas partners on the North Slope. Electric vehicles have a really vital part in that. So driving them to the northernmost drivable point in North America is really showing that these technologies are ready for Alaska, and Alaska is ready for these technologies.
Electric vehicles have incredible performance, They also reduce cost for us, and I think for consumers in all walks of life, that's going to be really critical. So that belief that I have of really moving towards electrification of transportation is really part of what's driving me, part of what's gotten me involved in this whole experience. This year in 2022 is really a test drive for next year in 2023 when we are going to be scaling this event. We've already received some interest really from larger OEMs, larger vehicle OEMs around this medium duty and heavy duty vehicle side that may be speaking to that audience who work the Dalton Highway on an everyday basis for their job.
The first big win was Alyeska Tire stepping up because they believed in this event and what it means for the future of Alaska. And that was the tipping point for what we were able to do here today. With Alyeska Tire's sponsorship, we attracted the interest of other major OEMs who provided vehicles, who have provided support teams, who have provided us guidance as we're rolling out this electric infrastructure on the North Slope. What excited me was seeing the same excitement in other people's eyes when they realized, like, this is something that I want to participate in. And frankly, it all started with Alyeska Tire.
Now, I know everybody can't be with us in the vehicles or drive along with us, so the place to find information and updates is the ArcticRoadRally.com website. Appreciate all of the support from all of our community partners and the dedication of so many of the drivers that have brought their personal vehicles from Alaska and in some places Arizona and California. Many people have driven many thousands of miles already on electric vehicles and charging to get to this location, which is just the starting line of the Arctic Road Rally. Huge appreciation for all of this as we move towards vehicle electrification to everyone involved.
And again, going out of our way to thank the partners that were involved in that. ARM Creative and Alyeska Tire helped us with the video. They were helpful in all parts of the project, but thanks to them for the video. I'm also just going to read through these other sponsors, and there's a reason that I'm doing this here because I think it's illustrative of where we're headed. Folks that were included in this project and were sponsors included the Center for Transportation and the Environment, the Alaska Electric Vehicle Association, Advanced Blasting Services, the Alaska Energy Authority, the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, the Alaska Joint Electrical Apprenticeship and Training Trust, of course, Alyeska Tire. Then we had Chugach Electric Association, Siri, ConocoPhillips, Elevated Oats, GeoTab, Golden Valley Electric Association, Grizzly, Matanuska Electric Association, North Iron Engineering, Sandia National Laboratories, and Seekins Ford Lincoln and Fairbanks. I know it's kind of boring for me to read a list of companies, but the reason I'm so excited about this group of folks is because if you look at in other regions of the country when the kind of innovation ecosystem really took off, it was when you had the private sector, companies, corporates, some of those like local, corporate citizens that started reinvesting back in the community and pulling some of these efforts forward. And so I will read these names all day long because this is kind of how these innovation ecosystems take off. You start getting them pulled by the private sector. And so I'm just very excited about the way that event went. Again, if you want to follow it more, please go to ArcticRoadRally.com. And I think the team met last week to kick off next year's event already. So it's already up and running. So you've got the Arctic Road Rally, and that's one of the programs I wanted to highlight here. We've also got the tech deployment track, which is really the bread and butter or kind of the main part of Launch Alaska. This is where we recruit companies from anywhere in the world, and we connect them with, again, Alaskan organizations, Alaska partners, over this 8-month program. And today we had our first session of TrAKtion, of the Tech Deployment Track program. We had 50 panelists. Let me make sure I have the numbers right here. 50 panelists, 13 companies involved this year. The quality and number of applications this year were, and it's been this way every year for the past 4 years, we're just kind of a step above the previous year. It's getting stronger and stronger. We're getting more and more folks involved, and the companies are getting better and better. So again, as Alaskans, when we're trying to think about the future of the state, like there's a real bright spot here. There's a thing here that if we feed and water a little bit, it'll just continue to grow. And so those companies are going to work over the next 8 months. They're meeting with their infrastructure owners and trying to find ways to get steel in the ground projects done, get technology deployed. find commercial solutions, and they're off to the races. So many of them are here in this room, and it was a really fun kind of seeing that take off again today. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Okay, I'm talking a lot. I promise I'll sit down here at some point. I now wanted to kind of turn to the featured project of tonight, which is the work that we're doing in the community of Kotzebue. And the reason, you can tell I'm an excitable person, the reason I'm excited about this project is because it is one where you have what we kind of dreamed of when we started Launch Alaska, which was we have a rural utility that's working with some of these exciting, several of them are Alaska-born startups, and that's saying that sentence out loud is a remarkable thing. Like those of you who have not trying to cast aspersion on utilities, but they're not known for working with early stage startups. And it's so exciting to see this project going forward, and seeing this kind of partnership between these young companies and the community itself. I don't want to steal the thunder, so I got to watch what I say here before the rest of my team comes in here to jump into this project. But really, it all started, 18 months ago or so, when we first started doing some vulnerability analyses for Kotzebue Electric, and that led into this discussion about, geez, wouldn't this be interesting if we could actually look at all of our infrastructure, and could we think about how if we could better visualize our infrastructure, we could start sourcing solutions, and what startups are you working with? And this organic conversation came to the point where there's this really exciting project in Kotzebue. And I think our energy lead, Matt Najati, is gonna join us here for a second, and kind of walk through this project in detail and talk through some of the great work that's going on in this project. So without further ado, Matt Najati, you want to come up here and walk us through this? Oh, we have a little video first. Sorry, we'll do a video. So we'll do the Kotzebue video. Thanks. That you'll ever see. All right, so everyone, please join me in welcoming Matt Najati to the stage.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, definitely the quickest trip any of you are ever going to make to Kotzebue. I hope you enjoyed the flight. Thank you all for being here. As Isaac said, my name is Matt. I'm the energy lead for Launch Alaska, and I'm here. I'm also the project manager for the vulnerability assessment project that we're currently doing with Kotzebue Electric, the local electric utility in Kotzebue. The project was funded by the State of Alaska Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management as part of their State Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. And it's really at this point of the show that I'm going to make a small caveat, which is that this is very much a project that is still right in the middle of execution. So the entire project team, many of whom you'll see tonight, have been working really right up until this morning to get this showcase and demonstration ready for you. And there's a ton of tech that's all built in here and working together. And I can't promise there won't be a hiccup. But what I can promise is that it's going to give you still really good insight into the amazing things that we are doing in Kotzebue and what this technology is really capable of. And that's the bit that I'm most excited about for tonight. Before we jump into the project, though, I think we should talk a little bit about Kotzebue. The community has jet service, as you've seen, and it's considered a hub community for the Nano region. It's one of the larger rural communities in Alaska, but it is still above the Arctic Circle and not connected on a road system and without many of the services you might see here at Anchorage. Fortunately, there are some really fantastic people who we got to work with, like Matt Bergen, who hosted us when myself and the project team went up earlier this summer. And Matt Bergen is actually joining us on Zoom today. So we should hopefully see. There you go. Hey, Matt. Welcome. Thanks for swinging. Thanks for swinging by the airport to pick us up. Do you think you could tell us a little more about Kotzebue?
Sure. Welcome to Kotzebue. So we're at the airport. I take it.
We will be in just a second.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
You'll be at the airport
Great.
in just a second. Give us a sec.
Roger that. Welcome to Kotzebue, where we had our first frost of the year this morning.
All right, Matt, go for it. You're at the airport.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the Kotzebue International Airport, Terminal 1, upper level. And this is where we pick everybody up that's coming to visit Kotzebue in Northwest Alaska. And when you leave the airport, you're one of the first places I like to go is check out the water and go down Shore Avenue. Shore Avenue also is Chicago Shore Avenue, named for the late Al Adams, Senator Al Adams. And so this is Shore Avenue, looking out on the ocean towards Little Diomede in Russia, and a little closer is Shishmaref in that direction. The recent storm, we had water right up to the edge of the road, but not quite on the road. So we're panning towards the north, and we're right in front of the Empress Restaurant, which is one of the local favorite restaurants. And great food there. The Empress is right next to the more well-known but recently burned down Bayside restaurant. We lost Bayside a couple of years ago. So Empress is a favorite local eatery on Shore Avenue there in Kotzebue. And then going a little further down Shore Avenue, we passed the hotel. The hotel is the kind of the best place to stay in town. It's a four-story hotel built in 2012 to replace the old hotel, which definitely needed to be replaced. So this is the Ludwig Hotel. Has a great restaurant that people love to go for lunch and dinner at. And it's always full. Pretty full. Lots of people love to stay there, and it's a great place to stay in Kotzebue if you come up from Kotzebue. So that's in Shore Avenue. And then going a little further along Shore Avenue, towards the north end, we come up to the kind of the dock area of town. So this is where the bulk fuel terminal is. Crowley Fuels has a bulk fuel terminal there, as well as the dock. And you can see all their tanks here. So they have all sorts of petroleum products. They store jet fuel, stove oil, gasoline, a little bit of everything to keep the region going. So this is sort of on the north end of town, at the north end of Shore Avenue. And just a little bit further from Crowley is the high school, Kotzebue K through 12 high school. So this is an all-connected building. So essentially from kindergarten through 12th grade, you can go through the whole building, and it's all connected. This is also the site where President Obama gave his address to the region at the Kotzebue Gym. So the Kotzebue School is a great school and a great facility as well. And that's on 3rd Avenue, which is the main drag through town, the main street through town. Leaving 3rd Avenue, we get to the store. So we have one main store in Kotzebue, and that's the AC store. So the AC store, a store that has company that has places all throughout rural Alaska, and Kotzebue is one of their larger stores. And the talk of the town is that there may be a new store coming, a new AC store. Just back towards the airport from AC is our regional hospital, the Manilik Health Center. So this is the front door of the hospital. It's about an 80,000 square foot, 7 or 8 bed hospital. Houses all sorts of services, dental, vision, emergency, and then long-term care, elder care as well. And this is also a building that we have an electric heater that we're able to use excess wind power to heat the local hospital. So this is the Manilik Health Center on 3rd Avenue. And then coming further back towards the airport on 3rd Avenue, you get to our old power plant there. And this is the back entrance to the KEA headquarters. KEA has their main offices there. And then looking to the left a little bit is right across the parking lot is the powerhouse. There's the smokestacks from our diesel generators and our radiators right there. And it's here where when you get to the Kotzebue Electric Association headquarters, where we're going to meet one of our board members, Reed Magdans, who's going to share a few words with us. Hello, Reed, right there.
I'm not as tall as Isaac. One of these. I'm here, Matt. Good to see you. Again. I saw Matt at the airport this other night. Chatted about this. All me? Sure. Unuk Charlotak, everyone. Good evening. Kuyirunga, Eyuga Gipsitna, Atikaktunga Pat Lungmek. Inyuguktunga kikiktagrungmi si kayengom angalat chiringi ilyorunga. So I'm Reed Magdans. I grew up in Kotzebue. I'm a KEA board member. I've been on the board about 1.5 years. My parents both moved to Kotzebue back in the 1980s from Nebraska and California. And so in the most basic sense, that's how I got here. They found their way up north, and I was raised there. Graduated from high school in Kotzebue, spent some years away about 3 years ago, moved home full-time, and I've been living there the last 3 years. I work for a local contractor. We were driving loaders and trying to build lift station this morning, and it's great to be down here this afternoon, or this evening with all of you. So I'll just give a brief overview of KEA's operations and what the utility means for the community. KEA is an electric cooperative, so that means it's owned by its members. The board of directors, like me, are elected by the members. The members are residents of Kotzebue who have an electric meter. When you go get your electricity, you sign a form, establish a membership, as well as sign up for service. All are, like I said, the board's elected by the members. Any profits also go back to the members or reinvested into the cooperative. It's a common utility model across rural America. Co-ops electrified America. Co-ops electrified much of rural America, and they also electrified Kotzebue. So KEA, like most of Western Alaska, is a primarily diesel operation. As Matt was showing here, that's our main power plant right across the parking lot here. It runs diesel generators, the same sort of fuel that you'd put in a Toyo stove, in boilers, like many rural Alaska homes have, the same stuff that the heavy-duty trucks and heavy equipment on the road run on. And Kotzebue doesn't have any base load renewable. We don't have hydro, we don't have geothermal. There's no natural gas right nearby to tap. So we were a diesel-only community when I was born. And about that time, about when I was born, the board of directors started recognize the vulnerability that comes from being a diesel-only cooperative, vulnerability to global events like the one we've seen in this past year, also the vulnerability to the state politics of the power cost equalization in Juneau, which was an issue at that time and was an issue again just a few years ago. So the board decided to look into renewables, and with the support of the community and support of management, they did research and decided to invest in wind power. And in the late 1990s, when I was in elementary school, Kotzebue established the first utility wind farm in the state of Alaska after some early failures with wind technology that our former general manager was just telling me led many people to tell us we couldn't do it. But we did. We established a wind farm in the late 90s, and since then have continued to expand it with strong support from the community for reducing our diesel reliance, reducing the cost of diesel. Today we have 2 large wind turbines. You're going to see more about this later. I'll just give the top line numbers. About 25% of Kotzebue's electric load on an annual basis right now is wind and solar. On windy, sunny days, we can hit 75% on a daily basis. So that's a pretty big deal for us, something we're really excited about. And we have concrete plans to go to 50%. We've heard the governor's goal that he wants 50% renewable generation in Alaska. We're trying to hit that in Kotzebue. We received funding from the state this past year to expand our solar facility. We have plans for more wind turbines, and then most importantly, if we can build a larger battery, we would be able to go 50% renewable on an annual basis. And not only that, really exciting for people in the bush, we could have a town of 3,000 people, no baseload renewables. We'd have enough renewable generation and battery backup that we could go diesels off at times. No diesels running in town, towns running only on renewables, 3,000 people above the Arctic Circle. Before I go, I have to give a huge acknowledgement to our team at KEA. They're the ones that get this all done. It's certainly not me. Matt's a huge part of that team, absolutely invaluable to have him at KEA. We're really proud as a board that we have a stable local staff. It makes a huge difference in a place like Kotzebue. Matt's lived there with his wife for I don't know how long. I know I went to school with his kids. We have our linemen, Glenn and Gary, both grew up in Kotzebue. They keep the power on even in the winter blizzards. Incredible what those guys do. Our plant operators, Rocky, we lost a longtime plant operator to retirement this year. All the best to him, but we were sad to see him go, of course. Happy for him and sad. His name was Claude Wilson, if any of you have ever run across him. Runs the Iron Dog also out of Kotzebue. We have a great office staff. Our general manager's local Kotzebue guy. So we're really proud of that team. They're the ones who get this all done. Couldn't do it without them. And then a message to all of you here, to the state and federal representatives in town, your support for KEA is invaluable. We deeply appreciate it, and it is know that at KEA it's going directly to what it should, which is ensuring that every Alaskan, like every American, has access to affordable, reliable basic utilities, even when you live on the edge of the Chukchi Sea. And then my last message is that when things change fast, as anyone who has tried to use a cell phone in rural Alaska over the last decade would know, rural areas often lag behind. But KEA and other cooperatives around the country are doing what we can, doing our best to ensure that when it comes to the green energy transition that we are undergoing right now, that rural Alaska does not lag behind, that instead is on the leading edge. And that would not be possible without collaboration from people like Isaac, like Matt, like all of those of you in the room. We need your help. We need your collaboration. We're excited to partner with you to make sure that's the case. So thank you again, Kuyana. Thanks for having me. Thanks for bringing me down here for this, and hope you enjoy the rest of your tour of Kotzebue. Back to you, Matt.
Teku Reed. Teku. Okay, back to me, Matt.
Back to you. Go for it, Mr. Bergen.
Okay, we're going to do a little bit more on Kotzebue or Kikik-Tagruk, the general area of Kotzebue, and kind of a little bit about Kotzebue. You know, we're a low flat terrain that is an annual temperature below freezing, hence we have quite a bit of permafrost in the area. Our average temperature is 22 degrees. That's probably rising with climate change. And we only get about 4 feet of snow. Usually all blows away, so it's hard to see that 4 feet. And we get some pretty horrendous wind chills in the winter as well, which is pretty harsh on us humans, but great for producing wind power. And we're ice free only about 3.5 months of the year. That changes every year, and that sort of allows us to get fuel in and other goods. So a little bit about Kotzebue Electric. We've been around since 1953, or even 1952 is when we were first incorporated as a rural electric cooperative through REA at the time. Built our first power plant in 1953 and 54, and we're still actually using that power plant here at the powerhouse, and we're actually using it more and more with the use of renewables. We first ventured into wind power, actually installing our first turbines in 1997, and as Reed mentioned, it was sort of a hedge against diesel fuel price fluctuations, and also the loss of the PCE program that was sort of at risk at the time. Going out towards the wind farm now, you can see that we, on average, our load's about 2.5 megawatts through the year. Our peak load in the winter gets up to about 3.4 megawatts, and in the summer it drops down to about 1.6 or 1.5 in the middle of the night. We presently have about a total installed capacity of renewables of 2.9 megawatts, and but we do have quite a bit of diesel capacity installed as well for backup. You know, we're not connected to anybody else, so we have a double contingency firm set of diesel generation. And all 3 of these technologies work together to provide power for Kotzebue: diesel, wind, and solar. And Reed mentioned we can do 75% of renewables on our system pretty regularly, but we did hit 95%, and even we hit 100% for a minute or two this summer, with the benefit of a cold and sunny day in, I think it was May. So we had full power production from wind and full power production from solar, and hit 100%. So now we're on our, we are at the farm. So we're looking at arriving at the wind farm. When you first get there, you'll notice that we have some smaller, older turbines. These are the turbines that were installed in the late 90s. 1997, we installed our first 3 AOC turbines, looking to the left there. And essentially, those 3 machines are still up. They could be operable with enough tinkering and manpower. These older machines are pretty simple to work on. It just takes quite a bit of manpower. And through the years, working with the U.S. Department of Energy and also some state programs, we're able to expand our fleet of turbines, adding more AOCs, adding the first North Wind 100. You can see there, that's our North Wind 100. That's the 3rd North Wind 100 ever installed in the world. And essentially, that sort of broke the ground for the North Wind 100 in Alaska. Once they proved the cold weather capabilities of the North Wind, AVEC adopted the North Wind 100 as sort of their primary machine for village applications, and I think there's 30 to 40 North Wind 100s across rural Alaska now. So KEA has been a test site for wind technology through the years. testing various types of machines. Behind the Northwind there, we have a Vestas V15 that we installed and worked pretty well for a few years. But the big change came in 2010 with the advent of the Alaska Renewable Energy Fund. And the REF really enabled KEA to think big and enabled the installation of our two primary machines that we're running now, which are the EWT 900 kW turbines. So the EWTs have been installed now for 10 years and have been providing a significant amount of power with also quite a bit of reduced maintenance cost as well compared to the smaller machines. And that's been really the change throughout the world, going from smaller turbines to much larger turbines now. And kind of looking at some of the construction of the turbine construction process, if you will. These projects are heavily reliant on expert logistics. So getting the turbines from Europe or across the world to shore, landing them from the barge to shore. Our next step was to essentially store them for the winter. And then we did instead of a summer construction, we did a winter construction. So that involved building an ice road in order for the trucks and the cranes to work on frozen ground. All this was in March and April of 2012. To essentially build huge gravel pads was cost prohibitive. So working in the winter on the frozen ground afforded us the ability to install these large turbines. And you can see from the blades there, just how big those blades are. So we sort of graduated from the AOCs.
What's happening?
Up to the EWTs. There we go. And solar had always sort of been out there. Many folks off the grid, off the road system have had solar panels on their cabins and whatnot for charging batteries. But we've sort of watched solar develop through the years in the lower 48, and we're sort of waiting for the right timing to try solar in Kotzebue. KEA was able to successfully land some grants from the U.S. Department of Energy Tribal Energy Program through Nana Regional Corporation, and also from the Northwest Arctic Borough Village Improvement Fund. And with KEA funds, capital funds, we built phase one of the KEA solar power project, which is a 532 kW arrays of PV. And the trick to doing this was essentially decommissioning 8 of our 66 kilowatt wind turbines and that were 66 kW and plugging in 66 kilowatt solar arrays instead. So we utilized all the electrical infrastructure, all the road infrastructure, the fiber optic SCADA communications infrastructure, and it led to a pretty significant project savings. So these are our solar arrays co-located with the wind site. Now we can't call it a wind farm anymore; it's our renewable farm. So you have to think of it as a renewable farm. So when we do have significant renewables available, our local hospital, as I mentioned before, is a location where we can push some of that excess renewable power and create heat. So when we've reached our minimum amount of diesel power we can have on the system, and we still have more wind power or renewable power available, we have a 450 kilowatt electric boiler at the local hospital that's able to provide hydronic heating for the hospital. The benefit is the hospital is buying that energy at a reduced cost, essentially about 40% discount from their equivalent cost of heating fuel. And then those dollars stay in the town as well to keep our wind turbines and renewables going as well. So it's a good local circulation of dollars. We have some other grid sustainability equipment in our powerhouse. This is a ABB StatCom. So as we're getting away from traditional diesel only power generation and we get to more renewable power, this StatCom provides grid stability for when we are running at 75+% renewable contribution. We have significantly smaller diesel gensets we're running. So this StatCom provides voltage stability and VAR support on the system. And then the biggest game changer for Kotzebue Electric, and I think across a lot of Alaska, has been energy storage. As part of the Renewable Energy Fund, KEA was able to procure and install a 1.2 megawatt, 950 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. This battery has been phenomenal for preventing power outages and providing essentially spinning reserve on our system to allow us to run at such high renewable levels. So we can confidently run at 75, 90% renewable because we know we have the battery on the system to be able to fill in the gaps if we lose renewables. And if I'm thinking, is this the screen that shows the 50% by 2025?
Yes.
Okay. So this is all leading towards where we want to go in the future, which is to get to 50% diesel fuel displacement by 2025. And that really involves more of what we're doing, but a little differently as well. So the key to that is more battery, having a large enough inverter with batteries behind it to be able to power all of Kotzebue just on an inverter, on a battery. That gives us the confidence to run 100% renewables, have the engine off, and know we can be on this battery for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, and really displace the amount of diesel fuel we're burning. Adding more wind power. Two wind turbines is doing pretty good for us, but to really get to the point where we can confidently and successfully for long periods of time shut down our diesel generators and save fuel is to have abundant wind power. So with 2 more wind turbines, we'll have the ability to be diesel off with winds probably 23 to 24 miles per hour or higher is what we're looking at. So we could be diesel off for days at a time with the winds that we have in Kotzebue. And then more PV power. Our first installation of solar has been really phenomenal for the amount of power we're getting, the regularity of it from essentially early March through September, and that's the low maintenance involved with solar. So we're right now in the final stages of executing plans for phase 2. So we'll be at about 1.1 to 1.2 megawatts of solar in the next couple of years through a State of Alaska Renewable Energy Fund Round 14 grant. So we're moving ahead with more solar. The solar output fits our load pattern very well. So as the load comes up in the day, so does the solar power. A big part of making all these work is the system controls. And so enhancing our controls and then optimizing them to automate the capture of renewables, but also to bring on diesel when we need it in an emergency situation. So the key to that is having the controls to do that reliably and maximize our renewable capture. And the final big part of it, which is my what I feel most passionately about, is trying to get our local workforce to be able to operate, maintain, repair these systems so that we're not having to really bring somebody in from pretty far away. The economics really don't look good when you have to bring in technicians from pretty far out. So we're trying to work with our OEMs to develop the skills locally that through the internet, whether it's FaceTime or VPNs or whatever, to work with technicians at the factory, at the OEMs, and with our own local workforce to troubleshoot and make repairs to keep these systems up and running. So that's really where we're trying to get to in the future, which is 50% by 2025.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt, for taking us on that tour.
Anytime. Hope to do it. Come on up anytime.
Right on. As you saw, or heard rather, in Isaac's introduction, climate change is very real, and it is having a disproportionately large impact on rural Alaskan communities like Kotzebue, where it's happening faster than anywhere else. KEA, as you've heard Reed called out a lot of the folks, it is a small utility, and you can see from Matt's comments, they are really leaders when it comes to implementing renewables in the Arctic, in places where a lot of other people thought it wouldn't work. But at the same time, they do face challenges due to the remote nature of where they are, and other utilities in North America don't see that. Matt even touched on it in his last bullet point there about having a workforce that can work on these systems and be comfortable when a technician is sometimes a very far way away. The purpose of the project that we're working on here and that I'm now gonna really dig into with you is to identify potential vulnerabilities to KEA's infrastructure and systems driven by natural disasters and by climate change. And then to go from there and conceptualize projects that can address those vulnerabilities before they become an emergency or an infrastructure disaster. So how do you do that? How do you think about vulnerabilities that don't quite yet exist? When we started putting together what this project would look like, we said, okay, we have to do a few things. We know we have to leverage local knowledge. We know we have to figure out what is our starting point today. We need really good data and visibility into what all is there so we can make informed decisions, and we need a framework for making those decisions to define what our actions are going to be in the future. And that's essentially our vulnerability assessment project. We go and we do an inventory of all the power generation distribution infrastructure in Kotzebue. We create a workspace and a repository for all that inventory data where you can access it and analyze it and view it, and then create or try and find potential solutions to what we think the areas of vulnerability will really be. And to accomplish all that, long before I ever got out of bed and packed my bags and got on the jet, we needed to find some partners with the right technology to make this all work. And that there is really the most amazing part about working with Launch Alaska, was that we already had a portfolio of companies that had the right tech, and we had a network around the state that enabled us to really get things done. So it's at this point where I'd finally like to introduce the two Alaska-based companies who started out in the Tech Deployment Track Accelerator program and have now worked their way all the way through to our portfolio and are working with us on real projects in Kotzebue. So first up is Tanya James from 60 Hertz.
I'm even shorter than Reed, maybe. So my name's Tanya James. I'm the COO and co-founder of 60 Hertz. Matt, thank you for the warm introduction. We are a computerized maintenance management software. So if you've heard of a CMMS, that's what we are. If you haven't, you can think of us as a management software where all your asset records, your maintenance records, and your maintenance strategy is implemented. So as Matt Bergen was sharing with you all, there's a plethora of different types of resources that are out in Kotzebue that need to be maintained. That was one of the, when we first looked at starting a CMMS company. We really didn't want to, actually. There wasn't a solution on the market that fit the needs of the Alaskan communities that we were trying to serve, that was technology agnostic, that was offline first, that was accessible both in terms of connectivity as well as in terms of accessibility, usefulness, ease of use. They just didn't exist in the market. So we decided to build one ourselves. I'll show you a brief demo of the web-based application we call the Maintenance Manager. This application would be used by Matt Bergen, or is used by Matt Bergen. They're thankfully one of our customers, early customers, to run the maintenance strategy. And then we also have a mobile application, which is used by the technician that's on the plant floor. Rocky, Claude, it was very sad to see Claude go, but those guys that are actually putting in data, manual data, as well as we are working on telemetry data to pull in SCADA eventually as well. So this is the maintenance manager. I'll just highlight a couple things briefly here. I heard Matt and Jody talk about a repository of assets. So this is an asset registry view. There's a system. You have assets that are at that system. You can have a high-level view on just data points that you'd like to see. Sometimes we have customers that literally just put their preventative maintenance schedule and the date that it was done onto the fleet view. You can drill into specific assets and get more data about that asset. You can get static data. I don't know how many times the simple I cannot find the serial number for this asset. That is taken away by utilizing a CMS like ours, because we can have that static data. We also have trending data capability around any numeric or qualitative data or photos, actually. So you can then tag your asset with data points that you want to reflect back upon, or do export and do analysis on your own. So that's the asset registry light, I would say, or asset management light. The other core pillar of a CMMS really is the work order management. So the run hour based maintenance that's being done, the calendar based maintenance, and ensuring that that's happening. We have the ability to scale that sort of those features by templatizing the jobs so that are done the same way each time. We add forms where we can create customizable forms to walk you through different maintenance routines and manually capture data, all on the schedule in which your maintenance strategy is trying to implement. So a trigger, just a single event, you've surpassed 10,000 hours, do this tune-up. A conditional, forgive all the, I'm going to give you a bunch of diesel ones, but a conditional maintenance would be run hours, oil change on a specific interval of run hours. And then calendar would obviously be every month or week or something to that regard. So all that is placed into the CMMS software, and then there's an automation around sending out jobs to the technician for them to do that work. And then of course it's coming back into the web-based application to see what work is being done. And then lastly, I'll show that you can capture data from the field through the mobile application at the wind turbine site. Something doesn't sound right. Capture some photos, write in some details, and you can see that information then can go back to the maintenance manager to have some sort of review and approve or deny or add more tasks to really dig into that work that needs to be done. So that is what a CMMS is, and that's what 60 Hertz does. In this particular project, we were asked to kind of bend and shape maybe an edge case to do vulnerability assessment. And as we thought about our core competencies around customizable forms, field data capture, asset data tagging, and that vulnerability assessments can help drive maintenance decisions and capital planning, it made a lot of sense for us to be engaged with this. Let me make sure I can just jump right into Kotzebue's vulnerability assessment. We were able to build out a customizable forms based on collaboration with our partners and what data needed to be captured during this assessment. That data went against an asset that didn't exist before in KEA's workspace. So we were able to inventory and bring in more of the assets, more of the distribution assets we didn't have visibility of before. We were able to define that process in our software so that in a year from now, 2 years from now, you can do the same vulnerability assessment again and then start seeing trended data. So with that, I'll pass it back to Matt, and thank you all for the time.
Thanks, Tanya. I have one other introduction to do, and it's actually the person that's been standing up here on stage with me the entire time quietly. I'm now going to make him actually talk, in addition to doing all the driving and navigating of the system you're seeing behind me. So this right here is Jay Byam with TrAKtion.
Hey, everybody. I'm tired already from standing up here. So hi, I'm Jay Byam. I'm the one of the founders and the CEO of TrAKtion, also professional presentation clicker. This side of the room has gotten my best side so far, just so you know. Essentially what TrAKtion is a startup that built a cloud platform for drag and drop digital twins. What is a digital twin? A lot of people have a lot of different opinions, but I'm going to give you my definition, which is the right one. And it is a 3D representation of a real world thing. Pretty general. What we've been showing you so far in the tour of Kotzebue has actually been the TrAKtion platform, and we're going to continue to show you other, aspects of the platform as we show you other results from the specific project. But essentially, our platform allows you to combine 3D maps, GIS information, 3D models, and then spherical images. And then the real important part of all of it is to put the data on top of it. All the data, right? So whether it's a static manual or you're pulling in things like 60 hertz information that's live or SCADA data, all of these things, it's essentially serving as a 3D portal for absolutely everything you need to know about your assets. And the whole point really is to bring about better data availability, because without access to the data that you need, you end up doing things like reactive maintenance rather than preventative. You end up losing asset information altogether. There's already been discussion tonight of workforce turnover. They lost Claude, right? What if we could take everything in Claude's head and put it on some side panels so that the next person that came along could just click on a thing and see what Claude wrote in there about what he knew from his 1,000 years of experience, right? That's the kind of idea behind building digital twins in the browser, all accessible in your browser, no special downloads, essentially to be more accessible and to do better at knowledge transfer, right? If it's in a 3D interactive environment, science tells us it's at least 2 times more effective at knowledge transfer and retention of that information. I can show you the studies if you're interested, but for now, science says so. And so I was also offered to do a more general demo of our platform, and I said no, because basically this whole presentation has been kind of a demo. So I'm going to cheat and say my presentation for the rest of the time is our demo here. So don't worry about all this Kotzebue stuff. Just pay attention to our platform as we go forward. That'd be great. With that, back to you, Matt.
In addition to running his startup and clicking around for me, Jay is also a comedian on the side, in case that wasn't clear. When we flew up to Kotzebue earlier this summer, Matt Bergen met us at the airport and took us on a very similar tour to the one he just virtually gave you. He picked us up, drove us down shore, showed us all the major landmarks, the restaurants and the store and the hotel and the school, and then we ended up back at the power plant. And at that point, it was like, okay, it's time to get to work, inventorying equipment using all the tools and surveys and forms that 60 Hertz had built, and collecting a whole bunch of laser scans and 3D images and drone captures to build this virtual environment in the TrAKtion platform to visualize it all. But how do you actually begin? We're talking about a power plant with a ton of equipment inside it that was built in the 50s, and we didn't really know where to start. So Matt Bergen took us all into the KEA office, and we sat down at the table, and he did what I think some of you might already be familiar with if you've worked with Matt before. He drew us a map. And he figured that's the best way to transfer this knowledge of what is in the power plant. So you can kind of see if you start on there's kind of 4 boxes you see there. The 3 on the left, the 3 big ones, are the 3 main parts of the powerhouse. On the very left, that's what's called the old plant. That was built in the 50s, houses 3 of Kotzebue Electric's diesel gensets where they generate power. There's also an office space and some fuel storage tanks. There is a vehicle shop just on the bottom there. The center section of the powerhouse has more fuel storage. It's got a boiler system. There's radiators on either side of the building that allow them to manage the heat coming off of the gensets. And then if you go to the right section, there's more generators and more switchgear and more fuel storage and air tanks and compressors. There's a lot of gear. You can also see Matt drew an outside view, so if you step even further all the way to the right side of his map, that's the substation where they have transformers and their battery energy storage system and more radiators. And you can't quite see it, but on his picture, he even drew for us the fuel storage facility that's across the street. And so I now look to all of you and say, you just got the tour, and I showed you the map. Are you fairly comfortable you know everything that's in the KEA powerhouse? No? Yeses. Maybe some are saying, yeah, I know what's in there. In case you need a slightly deeper dive, I'm very excited to say that Kartorium Solution does more than just put things on a map. It allows us to take a really immersive view at KEA's infrastructure. So we can start looking at the power plant, but we can even step inside the power plant and start to really dive deep on all the things that KEA has there to make and generate and distribute power for the community. So now we're gonna if you look at this, it's very similar to Matt Bergen's map. It's got a little bit more detail, but we can dive in and do a similar walkthrough and find all those same pieces of gear.
Is it also a video game?
Just about. I'll have you know, Jay tried his darndest to have me navigate this with a Nintendo Wii controller in case I didn't have enough things to do while I was up here. In the end, we decided we really wanted him clicking around, but just about video game at the same time. We're now inside the power plant. And you can see here, this is just one of the 6 diesel engines and generators that KEA uses to generate power. You can kind of walk up and down the aisleways and transition through all of this much the same way you would if you were in Google Street View, except you're now in the powerhouse. As Jay kind of navigates back out here, you can see just like that gray box there and the next one, there's a lot of cabinets and boxes in a power plant. These are control systems. These are interconnection points. These are the places where the operators for KEA manage and dispatch these diesel generators to match the generation to the load in Kotzebue. You can see this long piece of equipment on the left side here. That's what we call switchgear. It's not dissimilar to the breaker panel that you have in your house, just quite a bit larger. And as Jay already kind of alluded to, the most powerful thing here is if you can start taking the data that lives in 60 hertz and mapping it to the individual assets in the Kartorium platform. And now you're at a place where you're looking at checking, what's the bus amperage rating on that piece of switchgear? What's the serial number for, or the breaker model number? Or what year was it installed if you have somebody that's not familiar with the plant? You can put pictures and you can put all the information that you would otherwise need to know without ever walking into the power plant. Jay, if you can continue us along our tour here. This right here is a little office space within the power plant for the KE operators to work. You wouldn't know it from just looking at this. It's not 100% immersive in that we don't have sound, but when these gensets are running, it is very loud in there. You can't have a conversation. You've got ear protection in for sure. So this is a little soundproof office space where the operators can sit. You can have a conversation if necessary. You can manage the control and see all the same information they can see in their plant office. And then, oh, there's the same StatCom that Matt Bergen had a picture of earlier, now in place very much in the powerhouse. And from here, we can see the same vehicle shop, and we can move our way around the corner into the central part of the power plant. Very much the same feeling in here, though a different set of equipment. A lot of the items and gear in this part of the power plant is really there to support, regardless of whether power is being generated by gensets on the left side, the old plant, or on the right side, the new plant. So a lot of the venting that you saw from the outside, all that exhaust runs up through here. There's radiators that connect to manage heat, as I said. And you also have tanks like, like these yellow ones. These are day storage tanks for fuel. So the diesel that's immediately to be used by all these engines as they're running is stored in tanks like these ones where they can come up to temperature. And the KEA operators in real time are managing, what do we think our load is going to look like? How much fuel are we using and how quickly? What's in each of these tanks, and how do we manage that in concert with our bulk fuel facility across the street? We're then going to hop all the way over to the right side of the plant, where again you've got 3 very large diesel gensets. Oh. Come on, Jake, keep up. You can do this, man. So you've got your generator here and your 3 gensets on this side of the plant. And you can see, as we get down towards the number 14 generator at the end here, we can associate the data, almost exactly the same data Tanya was showing you in Maintenance Manager, right here in the Kartorium platform. And this is all live data coming from 60 Hertz. So if there's an update from one of the operators, we can see it right through in the Kartorium platform. And again, we can get all sorts of information about power ratings and serial numbers and model numbers, when it was installed and what it's doing, who the manufacturer is. As we do that, we're going to continue our tour out the back door of the power plant and into the substation yard. And this is the part of the show where I'm going to do something I don't normally do, which is I'm going to say, I'd like everyone to take out their phone. Because we're going to get you to scan that QR code that we've got up on screen there. Because it's just another way of showing you what you can do with a platform as flexible as this. If you scan that QR code, it's going to load up this exact same model of the substation yard for you to explore all on your own. I'm still going to be giving you a guided tour, essentially, but it gives you a little bit of freedom to do some exploration, I hope. Somebody's going to nod at me and say, yes, this loaded. Yes, I see some nods and some thumbs up. That's great. Up on the platform there, you can see there's 7 transformers. This is the equipment that steps up the voltage from when it's generated by the gensets for distribution all around the town on one of their circuits. And just like inside the power plant, we can pull open side panels. We can see information about the manufacturer, the year it was installed, primary and secondary voltage ratings, all the things you would need to know to start preliminary maintenance, the things you would need to know to look at, hey, do I have an issue with a certain set of model numbers? Do I have gear that is approaching end of life? We can continue our tour around the back of the substation here, and we can take a quick look inside KEA's battery energy storage system. This is the same one that you saw a very early photo of from Matt Bergen, now in operation. It's not a very large space, it's pretty tight, but this is a very specially designed container in that it's housing lithium-ion batteries that enable Kotzebue to go and introduce renewables into their system in a way that is not going to cause stability issues. So, oh, we popped right back out. Doesn't matter, Jay, that's okay. All sorts of interesting kind of design decisions there, and a place where normally you would never walk inside during operation, but you can now get a really detailed look virtually. We're going to continue our way around the substation. You've got more radiators back here. You've got, up in this gray building there, you've got some more switchgear and breakers. But really what we're going to do is kind of zip right across the substation, across the street to the bulk fuel facility on the other side. We'll just let everything load in. So this is what is referred to as the bulk fuel facility. And for those of you who aren't familiar, KEA buys fuel for the entire year, essentially, that gets delivered over the summer, and then they store it for continued use throughout the winter when they can't get deliveries as easily. These are very large fuel tanks, and then you can also see all around, you're kind of standing in what is essentially a containment pit. This has been designed such that if there's ever a leakage or a breach, that the diesel fuel inside would be contained and not do any sort of damage to the environment around. This is not fuel, this is rainwater, but so need not be worried. But it's just kind of another place where you can get a view of the infrastructure that's really critical to the operations for KEA. We didn't just do this project for the power plant and kind of the surrounding area. We really said, in order to understand vulnerabilities that impact KEA, you have to get data from all over town. And KEA gave us access to their electric vehicle, which is a little smaller than the ones you saw in the road rally video, but I think it could have made it as well. It was perfect for getting us around town, for collecting data on poles and transformers and switches kind of throughout the community. There were definitely some things that I hadn't seen before, but which highlight why it's so important to be thinking about vulnerability associated with climate change and changing weather patterns, where you look at places where there's distribution poles that are in the water, and that's normal, but also requires, normal for KEA, but requires a degree of planning around how might this change or how might it need to change in the future as the environment changes. It was a wet couple weeks when we were up there, though nothing like what they've seen in Western Alaska over the last couple weeks recently. But you can even see here, you are really on, this is towards the end of the trip, on the road out towards the renewables farm, and you're right on the water. So really being able to look at vulnerabilities broadly and plan for them accordingly is critical for KEA and for the community at large. We're going to track all the way out here to the renewables farm, and Matt Bergen already kind of gave you a little tour of this, but we're going to do a slightly deeper dive. First, we're going to look at one of the two large wind turbines that was installed, and you'll see we've got another QR code here for you. This again will open up a model which you can access and interact with. And this is a slightly different version of what you've already seen. And again, kind of throughout this presentation, I am layering in more and more things that we're doing with this platform. So now instead of just an image, you're actually looking at a 3D model of this wind turbine, which was generated based on a whole bunch of drone imagery, but that still interacts in the Kartorium platform in exactly the same way. So we can step inside the tower of the wind turbine, and we can see all of the equipment inside. You can see the control system, you can see the converter, you can look right up the tower. I think the door was closed on the day we were in this particular one, but the other one you can see all the way up the tower. And you can kind of pick up any amount of detail that you want without ever driving out to the renewables farm. If we step back outside, you can also see that we associate the same 60 hertz data. And I know I've said this a number of times, but I think it's worth repeating how important the integration is here between data and usability of that data. And the fact that I can go in and look at any piece that's particularly relevant to me without ever leaving the desk is extremely powerful. one of the things that we did when collecting data on the wind turbines themselves was that we looked at foundation tilt angle. As Matt Bergen mentioned to you, this equipment was built on permafrost. And so understanding over time if that foundation is moving or tilting at all is critical in the overall health of that piece of equipment for KEA. So being able to log that and use 60 hertz to measure it over a period of time gives great insight into what's happening with their infrastructure. We can now zip over to the other side here where you have one more QR code. This is your last chance to pull up one of these models and look at it. So I'll give you just a second before we dive into their solar PV system. Thank you, Jay. Again, a slightly different implementation here. Now, instead of showing you that 3D model superimposed on the map, we can pull open a completely separate scene, which allows us to get into a much higher level of detail and complexity in that 3D model, that you can really go in and explore any specific detail of this solar array with great resolution. And we still map all the 60 hertz data to it, so you still know everything about that asset without ever going out to the field to actually see it. There is still a lot of work left to do on this project. You're really only seeing the first data elements that have been mapped from 60 hertz into Kartorium, and there was an incredible amount of integration work between those two companies to even get to this point. They may worry when I say this, but there are hundreds of more assets for which this process is going to happen until this is a fully populated workspace for KEA to use. And it's at that point that we'll be working with Matt and the board and the operators to identify where are their pain points, what do they think their vulnerabilities are. Let's see what the data says, and then let's start thinking about what are the projects that should be priority for them to ensure that they don't have infrastructure emergencies in the years to come. So with that great view of the team there standing in the renewables farm, I'm going to go back to Matt Bergen for just a closing note on the success of renewables in Kotzebue so far. Can you hear us, Matt?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
We can, and you're on screen. Go for it.
Great, great. Thank you. Yeah, the renewables, it's been a long journey, but a great journey and beneficial journey. Like I said earlier, we started in 1997 with our first 3 turbines, and didn't know what to expect as time grew on. We were seeing a little bit of fuel savings. And as we installed more turbines, we saw more fuel savings. In 2012, with the installation of our larger turbines, we had significantly more fuel savings. And we have come to the point now where we're saving about 300,000 to 400,000 gallons per year of fuel. So it's a significant contribution at this point. And our plans are to double that and to be able to displace 50% of our fuel that we're bringing in. And we know we can do it. We've been doing it for 20-something years, and we're looking forward to using more wind, more solar, and more battery, and then more utilizing the technology like we have through Kartorium and 60 hertz to help us visualize the installation of these technologies. The best places to put them is another big thing we're looking at, and really get to that 50% mark by 2025 is where we want to get to. So thank you very much.
Thanks once again, Matt, for joining us. Thank you to Reed, who flew in to join us this evening. Really thank you to the whole KEA team, right from the operators to the board, who have been extraordinarily supportive through this entire project. And then finally, I owe a big thank you to Jay and to Tanya and to your teams at Kartorium and 60 Hertz for making this all happen and making this showcase possible, as well as for all your work on this project. It's something I'm really excited about. I think I am safe in saying the audience here is probably also very excited about it now that they've seen what it can do. And it's with that I'm going to hand it back to Isaac to take us home.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and a big round of applause to Matt. And I just have to say, what we've just seen is we should probably all kind of be jumping out of our chairs and cheering for this because we've kind of seen several holy grails get solved here. One of them is just being able to visualize rural infrastructure without having to leave really anywhere. This is going to have huge impacts on our ability to do projects, get projects financed, also do all of this resilience planning and planning for these major changes ahead. And then think also about all the innovation that this can spur on, like other companies getting to participate in helping communities plan their own infrastructure for the future. It's a really exciting project. And yeah, thanks again to the folks who are involved. I also have to give a shout out to the Anchorage Museum for hosting us. This has been an amazing venue, not just this evening, but the whole day. Our main funder at the Office of Naval Research also has been a great funder of ours from the very beginning. And then last but not least, we have, you've seen, Matt Najati here this evening and a couple of folks up here, but there is a whole team at Launch Alaska that is behind the scenes that is working really hard. I have to give a shout out in particular to Rob Roy's. I showed up to this event tonight kind of wondering how the event was going to go and what his role was. And he said, no, I'm sitting down the whole time. Like, you guys are on the stage. But Rob has been behind all these projects as our Chief Innovation Officer and deserves a huge amount of credit for pulling all these projects together. But we have folks that are running our tech deployment track program that are getting the startups ready to feed into this. Susanna and Penny, and we've got Francis on the team who's running all of our impact and operations. And we've got Kirsten doing our communications and Pam doing our impact and partnerships. Lauren is backing up the entire team as well. And we just have this amazing team. And so if you don't mind, I would just kind of like to bring them up on stage and have everyone give our entire Launch Alaska team a round of applause for this great work. So come on up here. And Bridge is here as well, yeah. And Tim Leach just walked in. All right. I want to do a bow? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Thanks. And last but not least, we have several great board members. I saw Chad is here tonight. Dane Boysen is here as well. So thank you, Launch Alaska board. Others, there's Mary Miner. Thank you to the Launch Alaska board who's come here as well. And we have a reception out in the atrium right after this. So please join us out there. And we're excited to talk to you guys more about some of this work. So thanks for coming. And one last shout out. I have a long list, but Toast to the Town is the events group that put on this whole event and got everything coordinated. So please use Toast to the Town for future events. They did an amazing job for us.